Good evening, dear friends. Another Monday, and we are together with you in the 11th video of the Divine Order and the Universe online reading and commentary series.
Good evening.
This evening, we will not start with replying your questions. We will wait the questions to come for a while, then at the end of this video we can reply a few. Let's begin reading from where we stopped last week. We had previously said that there are many other elements above and below of the matter parts and elements constituting the earth, and these are not yet known by mankind. Similarly, we had also mentioned that in these elements unrecognized by mankind there is a constitution of hydrogen atom of such quality that it exhibits substance states in completely different capabilities which are above and beyond the knowledge of mankind about all manifestations of energy radiating from an atom. Material possibilities radiate from this hydrogen atom unknown to mankind and are so fluid and powerful as to compel the comprehension of mankind, prepare the possibility for and cause the occurrence of many events that mankind has never been able to comprehend so far. In summary, spirit is involved with matter. It brings about the state of conscious matter that is called body. Afterwards, spirit is completely bound by the conditions of that body. And within these conditions, all of its states that are called spiritual, moral and psychological, other than its organic activities, are bound by the brain and nervous system, that is, by the possibilities and capacities of the brain and nervous system. We will later explain the roles of states and actions assumed to belong to spirit but which, in truth, originate in matter, in the evolution mechanism. But so far, we have always talked about the side of these states that belongs to matter. If this was all there was, then it would necessitate justifying the anxieties, which we mentioned above, that people fret about. But despite the truths we have just explained, if we bear in mind the essential knowledge about matter, that it is powerless for any motion by itself, things will change. 4. This knowledge teaches us that no stirrings in matter are by the matter itself. Matter is absolutely devoid of power to do this. Therefore, any motion, any stirring of a being is the expression of a situation that has not been caused by itself. And there cannot be anything else. Otherwise, it would entail rejecting the main quality of matter, and this is not possible. So, we name all expressions which are not matter the being displays in all of these motions that are matter, the state of spirit in our universe. Thus, sublime manifestations called psychological, such as all kinds of love, thought, conscience that have occurred in a being through infinite motions, combinations, forms and states as matter, are in effect the counterparts of spirit's infinite behaviors which exist in its own plan and, unknown to us, have been translated into ideal, emotional and vital forms in accordance with the matter possibilities of the universe. Therefore, in belonging to being, it leaves nothing else but matter motions, and it makes it clear that all meanings and expressions in these motions belong to spirit. As an example of this, let us take comprehension. Mankind comprehends. Who comprehends is mankind. In their nervous system structure, there are such subtle combinations that these are continuously transmitting and receiving vibrations, energies that manifest as comprehension. And the health or ill health of the comprehension capability depends on the motions that occur as a result of interventions which are carried out by external influences through the duality principle and value differentiation mechanism upon these very subtle matter combinations in the nervous system which transmits and receives these energies. So, comprehension with its outer appearance occurs in matter and emerges with material vibrations. Therefore, it is a matter. Nonetheless, at the same time, it is also a counterpart, an expression of spirit's behaviors in matter that is reflected in the universe as if reflected from a mirror. That is, comprehension's state in motion belongs to matter. And its state in regard to expression belongs to spirit. So, this expression that belongs to states of spirit which are super-universe has been only interpreted and represented by the comprehension mechanism in the universe through depending on the possibilities of matter motions, within a completely material reality. More briefly, comprehension is the technical expression of a behavior in matter, which exists in spirit, with a quality that is unknown by the inhabitants of the universe. So, a day will come when the spirit will abandon the being depending on it in the universe for all time, and the abandoned being will disintegrate. But what will disintegrate are only the combinations, forms and motions of matter that carry these emotions, ideas and many more of these myriad expressions of which we do not know and which are to come in future. And originals of these states in spirit, of their quality we cannot know, that appear in matter motions will continue their infinite occurrence and flow, together with spirit. Actually, the loss of all those expressions the being carries with the departure of spirit and its returning back its inert and amorphous state at once constitutes the most obvious proof of this truth. Thus, in this way, we have expressed the fact that states that occur in a being are in effect only material symbols, material appearances, each of much vaster and encompassing states and behaviors that exist in the realm of spirits, of whose quality we do not know. That is why when being is spoken of, we remember spirits and understand that events involving beings only belong to their counterparts in the realm of spirits, of whose quality we do not know. This is a summary of what we have discussed previously and also one of the first parts of the book where the comprehension is mentioned in detail.
As you said, there are many phrases striking our attention, and comprehension is one of the most important points. Here, one of the things attracted my attention is, in these elements unrecognized by mankind there is a constitution of hydrogen atom of such quality that it exhibits substance states in completely different capabilities which are above and beyond the knowledge of mankind about all manifestations of energy radiating from an atom. The book talks about the higher levels and stages of the hydrogen atom. And yes, these are beyond our knowledge. Still, thanks to this book in our hands, we can discover some properties of these matter at higher levels, their subtleties and features from the clues given throughout the book. And of course, we are here to talk about those discoveries, so, let's talk openly. We had said that each realm has its own matter substance. And the matter substance of our realm is the hydrogen atom, yet the plans of duty has also distinct and different substance, but it is still matter. Then, what do we mean by saying higher levels and stages of the hydrogen atom we know? In many paragraphs of the book, it is mentioned that there are intermediary plans between stages, for example, one that comes after the hydrogen atom realm. Intermediary plans are also semi-subtle realms, but intermediary plans have their own particular means to prepare the beings from the lower plan for the higher plan. And how these intermediary and semi-subtle plans occur? Through a higher matter combination. That is, through emanations from the lowest level of matter at the semi-subtle realm and the highest level of matter of our realm. And what I understand from these words is, the light, the photons, the radiations, the energies emanated from our highest level of matter. Of course, these are not simple emanations but organizable energies, and we understand from the clues in the book that they are such emanations that they bring out imaginations, and the being gradually begins comprehending their usability. After all, the most developed application of the hydrogen atom realm, that is, realm of humanity which we are at the last stage of, is imagination. Increasing our ability of giving form to these higher-level emanations, to this higher-level subtle matter which is last step before passing into higher-level matter substance, and thus, making these forms animated. And think about the practices we do an advice meditation, praying, devotion, all kinds of practices for inner work. And while practicing these we live and experience our emotions, and imagination plays a powerful role in all of these. With these gradual and conscious efforts, we take the power of imagination into our comprehension and begin to learn attuning to it. In our dreams, in our meditations. I say gradual, why? For example, when one practices higher level or deeper meditations, a person may see or experience a high luminosity, and may think that, yes, I am enlightened. I attain the highest level in meditation. Well, let's say that person attained the utmost level in meditation, but does it mean that this person attained the utmost level of matter? He or she is still in the subtle matter realm. That's why, I say gradual. It is like practicing for the real game. Of course, such experiences are high level but still preliminary. Yet, we can experience such flashes of light or luminosity because that higher vibrational influence we contact in such practices, strikes the calcite microcrystals in the pineal gland within our brains and we experience this as light. As you know, our brain has the ability to perceive light. When sunlight enters through our eyelids, our brain stops secreting melatonin. That influence also lands at the pineal gland. And when people talk about seeing light beings, auras etc., the same mechanism is in effect. I understand those people because I experienced it myself. And in such practices, what we see as a realm of light, full of indescribable colors etc., are only what our brains can perceive from those high-level matters. Just a perception. Our brains can perceive only that much. So, to where it leads us. In the plan of duty, as beings, we will not have cloud-like, subtle but actual bodies. This is not the case. Actually, right now, our beings are not like that, anyway, but in that plan, our being will be in a level of complete comprehension. And the paragraphs we will read are preparatory sentences for the explanations about that state of comprehension. The state of integration with that subtle matter. This is what the expansion of comprehension means. The penetration of the comprehension into that matter universe. And what does it do, then? It forms, deforms, transforms that high-level matter and does applications through these by becoming that matter. Beings becoming of that matter is a very important topic. Let me give an example. Mansur al-Hallaj, he was a Persian mystic, poet, and teacher of Sufism. He was persecuted for saying, "I am the truth, Ana Alak," but it was a spiritual inspiration. Of course, he was not claiming that he is God. Mansur was a very advanced human being and able to receive such high influences, and people like Mansur are able to go into a deep meditative state right away. And in such a state, at the moment they begin to receive such high intuitions or illumination or radiance, they become that level, they become that state of subtler or higher matter, but of course, to the human brain it is not perceived as matter. So, enlightenment of that kind is the human version of such understanding, such insights. Such states are unstoppable, they are intense and come forth. And of course, such states cannot be attained by reading lots of books or watching lots of YouTube videos. I mean, not a state a person attains by learning information but by applying information to become that state. So, now, here, we are beginning to discover matter in subtler states. And our journey begins towards the truth of matter, that is, objective matter. And the aim for our being in the plan of duty is the expansion of comprehension, and becoming that state of matter. All our effort is to attain that state. Becoming humans was not the final aim for us. Let me briefly remind you the sequence. Spirit formed and connected to a being. That being formed a body, started to develop from a state of a cell, to a state of plant, to a state of animal, and to a state of human. This is the sequence of the development of our being. Again, state of human was not the final stage. We must stop thinking human-oriented. We have to. Because there is a new era of humanity, with more awareness, with a wider comprehension. Yet, even this new development of humanity has a next step and aim, plan of duty in later, the unitary. Now, we begin to learn to be in many levels at the same time. Sorry, I didn't give you a chance to speak but I am in a role. So, it seems that in the universe, there is no chance of using a state of matter without becoming that state of matter. First, we must become it and then we can learn using it. We become a cell, first. Then, we had the right to make a gathering of cells. Only then, we had the right to use it. Then we become a plant, and then we had the right to organize plant bodies. Then follows the animal stage when we started to gain some instincts, albeit automatically. And all that knowledge now is in use in our human bodies, in our intestines, in our organ systems which are highly developed organizations, and later, we learned to become a brain cell first and then to become a brain. Only after that stage, we gained the right to build such a complex system and we stepped into the stage of humanity. And if we did all of these, the reason was to gain the ability of using all of these. Yet, here, let's not disregard this point, while practicing inner work, just imagining things is not enough. Unless we can become what we imagine, there is no meaning to form shapes in our imaginative field. A good example is Einstein's thought experiments. They were visualized thought experiments, that is, imaginative experiments. He was building these thought experiments in his imagination, but he was in the experiment, riding the elevator, riding the train, that is, he was becoming that experiment, and then, he could use the laws of that state. That's what I want to say. To imagine and to become what we imagine is important because as we learn how to imagine, we begin to engage in that subtle or fluidic matter. But our ultimate aim is not this, because in the plan of duty, imagining and becoming what we imagine will be a simple thing. We will not need using this because we will be able to use that matter, that is, we will be at a higher level of that imaginative realm. Yes, even from a one sentence, I glean these thoughts.
I agree with you. And what strikes me most in these pages is terming the body as conscious matter. And to summarize what we previously mentioned, spirit connects to an atom and at first, by passive adaptations, later by developing it, spirit learns directing influences so it can expand its scope through applications on it by gathering and dispersing it, and later spirit brings that ensemble of energies to the stage of being, and after that stage, that being passed through all those stages and intermediary stages, until it arrives to the stage we are in now. And during all those are almost infinite processes, matter learns to respond to the needs of the spirit. As it responds and gains motions, more influence arrive at and its scope gets more expanded. Also, the emphasis on the brain and the nervous system is very important. The possibilities and ability of the nervous system is emphasized because the expansion I mentioned depends on it. Just like a modem receives the internet service more and better as its gigabytes increase. And how are these related? If our being is not within this body of ours, and if everything is managed by a mechanism of influence like induction, if there is nothing that comes in and out, if this is completely a state of influential interaction, then, the quality of our receiving that influence from our being and the quality of transmitting all knowledge we could gain by our emotions, feelings and thoughts through the events we live in becomes very important. And how we do this transmission. While we sleep, we make an accounting of all the events, emotions, thoughts we experience during the whole day. We sift or filter these and store in our unconsciousness. In the further parts of the book, a new model of consciousness will be given and we will discuss its mechanisms. As you said, since the moment of our conception in our mother's womb until this moment in our lifetime, the whole experience acquisition we could have remains in our unconsciousness as images, emotions, feelings, thoughts, even from ancestors of many generations. Not only the images we formed, but also the ones we picked from our environment, from our parents, especially the mother. And each time we receive an information, our brain compares it with all those experiences and brings out an illustration, a collage, actually, an illusion. Even what our friends watching us right now perceive is so individually customized or subjective that none of us perceive the same thing. That's why I say, it is an illusion. And our senses are so limited that according to some research results, our brain can only take in 7 different sensations at once. We see the room, sense the degree of heat in the room, hear the words that has been said, etc. Yet, the outcome of these separate information is always mixed with what is stored in our unconsciousness. So, creating clear images as you mentioned is very hard because many other things, be it from the collective or secondary influences, etc., get mixed with the image intended. In this context, the quality and intensity of focus for the meditations or imaginative work are very important. Because every practice we do related to our emotions, thoughts, etc. have an influence on our brains and nervous system. Again, as you mentioned, for a new habit to be established, it takes 21 days while the new neurological connections occur in the brain. So, it is obvious that in order to change an established structure, we need to use the power of imagination, the influence of focused intention to make a change in the matter of the brain. Yes, bioresonance method may help in making such changes in the habitual neural pathways, but still it needs to be supported by our imaginative work on our inner world.
Yes, this is a very important topic. I had taken down some notes. I'd like to underline the state of becoming through our imaginations. Let's take an everyday example. drama series we watch on TV almost every evening. We watch a show, a drama, full of suffering and pain, and we begin to feel emotions as we watch it. Unconsciously, we become the actor in that show and start to feel what she or he pretends to feel. We feel sad, even cry while watching. If I tell you, Tülin, get emotional and cry, you can't do it. No meaning in this without a reason, correct? But without a personal reason, we get emotional and cry as we watch those TV drama series. Actually, how those images on TV influence us is the exact mechanism of our imagination. Same mechanism, and our brain take these scenes in the TV as real, factual, as if they are our own. That's why I say, let's not watch TV dramas before we go to bed. Because, we go to bed with all those influences we received from those TV dramas, unconsciously feeling that not the actors but we are the ones who are betrayed, cheated, threatened, persecuted, etc. As if we don't have enough personal problems to deal with, we also carry these second-hand ones to bed, to our sleep. And it creates an extra mental load for us, and we lose our real focus. Yes, I don't watch TV in the evenings, but I must confess that sometimes I watch TV shows and movies whole day, and when I come to my senses, I say to myself, Bilgehan, you should have taken your own advice, because despite I know that these were just screenplays, scenarios, all those images stay with me for a long time. Well, back to the topic. When we imagine, our brain takes it as real. Our neurons experience it as real. In the exact way, they experience our fears, concerns, doubts, phobias as real. Our feelings of insecurity, troubles, etc. always turn on the imaginative construction engines. We construct these thought forms, or formes pensées, as our elders call these. These thought forms need our energy to be continued. And as time goes by, we cling to these thought forms, they become a part of us and we depend on them to continue our habitual thinking. Actually, we begin to live by their negative energies. You may ask, how is it possible? Last week I had mentioned about the chemicals produced by our cells through the influence of those thought forms or images over our brains. As those chemicals are added on the cells, they affect the cell's way of working. And as those cells are divided and multiplied, this way of working becomes habitual for the cells, and, eventually, for us, as well. You mentioned bioresonance device. Yes, we can experience some improvement with such methods, but after a while, the emotions at the root of our bad habits regenerate and we suffer again. So, the real health starts at learning how our organism works. To learn how the microcosmos works, and then, we can pass to mastering its way of working. As we become more mindful about those images of our inner world and making them more aligned with healthy ways and making them alive enough to become them, of course, by the possibilities and capacities of the brain and nervous system, as the book says. Again, it is not only about keeping the brain healthy, it is about to understanding how the brain works and its relation with the subtle matter. In these paragraphs, we read, if we bear in mind the essential knowledge about matter, that it is powerless for any motion by itself, things will change. For, this knowledge teaches us that no stirrings in matter are by the matter itself. Matter is absolutely devoid of power to do this. Therefore, any motion, any stirring of a being is the expression of a situation that has not been caused by itself. And there cannot be anything else. What is this situation? The need of the spirit and the evolution of spirit. Or, in other words, spiritual need and spiritual evolution. Let's summarize again, by the help of the original principle, influences that are caused by the needs of the spirit filtered from the unitary expands into the universe initiates motion in matter. Again, the essential knowledge about matter, matter cannot move by itself. Alright, here is a chair. It does not have a spirit, correct? But what about the spiritual need in this almost infinite progress of occurrence of particles, and then, of atoms of this chair, then the organizing these atoms into elementary materials, then putting these materials together to make visible, solid objects? Even this chair becomes through the necessities of the original principle and of the unitary's influences, of course, in accordance with the physical laws of the nature. And what we call the physical laws of nature is one of the lower levels of the necessities of the original principle. As the book says from the very beginning, we call the knowledge of whole universe as nature in a partial fashion. So, we must understand this: what we see as solid objects like this chair, this desk, when observed by the electron microscopes or similar gadgets, it is proven that all matter is in motion. Everything moves. That desk is in motion. The reason we see this desk as a static object is the frequency range of our perception. It is limited. Actually, right now, everything is vibrating in motion, and this motion exists because the needs of not only one spirit but infinite number of spirits. And this motion is initiated by the original principle when the need for spiritual development begins related to the need of the spirit. We always must keep this in mind. Alright, at this point, I would like to ask a question to our dear friends. But first, please see this slide and watch the video in this link. This video is about 3D printing of organs. And after watching this video and hearing my question, please write your comments in the comments section. Let's make this series a little bit more interactive. Yes, the video is about research on 3D printing of organs. Now, they can 3D print ears, hearts, veins by using the organ cells taken from the patients, and the results are very promising. The hardest organ to print so far, they say, is the kidney. You can see in the slide the blue ink they inject into the very thin veins in a kidney under construction. And the researchers say the easiest organ to 3D print is the skin. So, they are using the properties of biology and the properties of 3D printing. Okay, let me get to the point. They printed a patch of skin and patched it on a problematic area, let's say the tip of our finger, and it is adapted perfectly and became our own skin. Even our fingerprint appeared. It didn't vanish, it is restored. Okay, here is the question: was it our spirit or being that using us humans for printing that patch of skin and commanding us to patch it to our fingertip? Or is there something else going on here? What kind of a system works here? Is it against the laws of the divine order? Or to put it in an old way of saying, is it a sin? Is it wrong to do this? From the ages when someone comes up with an innovation but persecuted or even killed because of the religious concerns, to this age of ours, did things change? I mean, if such concerns are still valid, should this research be stopped? Or is this research so normal in the way of progression? Just think of the persecution of Hazarfen Ahmed Kelabai of 16th or 17th century who tried to fly with a bird wings-like contraption, but today, we travel with planes, we even flying to space. So again, if this patch of skin, that ear or vein is alive, where is its spirit? And what happens when it is integrated into our body? Please watch the video, ponder on such questions and write your comments. But not right away, you will need time to think deeply and to reach some intuitions. So, again I ask, please take this example and think, is it animate or inanimate? Is it wrong or right to do in regard to the universal laws? I look forward to reading your comments. I am sure you are aware that we appreciate and value your comments and questions. Together, we make this series more interactive. So, if you accept, this is a spiritual homework for you.
Yes, let's make this reading and commentary series more interactive, together. Now, there is a question from Ms. Gulchin: if the most important source of evolution is suffering, is it possible to gain some development by imagining the suffering, like a kind of empathy? Or do we attract this suffering to our own lives by imagining it? Maybe, we first need to look at the roots of the factors we suffer from in our lives. I mean, why do we suffer? Whenever a situation arises in life, and they arise all the time, if we feel a resistance to this situation, pain and suffering occurs. Actually, it points to the degree of our flexibility in the face of situations in life. If we can't be flexible enough when we face with a situation, if we can't adapt to it, we suffer. However, as our comprehension, our outlook, our awareness expands, our reactions to the same or similar situations change for better. That is, our feelings, reactions, emotions change for better. Also, the degree of suffering is not same for each person. In a family, each member can react differently to the same situation. Their degree of suffering varies. Yes, this evening we mentioned the power of imagination. I think that's the reason of our friend's question. Yes, let's say we sit down and imagine all kinds of suffering. Even, we don't need to sit down to do this, as you mentioned. While watching TV dramas, we are constantly exposed to such imaginative scenes and become synced with these, and even we dream these as we sleep. So people may think that these imaginative scenes help our evolution. Such a question may arise. Yet, we also mentioned that we must be careful about the impressions of such scenes. When a person remains in sync with such pain and suffering, it means that person is in a deadlock, making no progress. It is not about taking in all the pain, staying with all the suffering to be evolved. It is about becoming aware of the roots of that pain and suffering and trying to work on transforming these root causes so we can break such deadlocks. When we feel the pain of another person, it is not empathy but sympathy, that is, taking on someone's pain and suffering. However, empathy means seeing the root causes of that person's suffering and truly understanding why that person suffers. Yes, the system we call the world school is a realm full of suffering and pain, but the aim is to transform these, after all. The aim is not shouldering all the pain and suffering in the world, is not self-harming, is not losing ourselves in pain and suffering. On the contrary, the aim is first, going through the pain and later by observing it as objectively as possible. In this way, when a similar situation arises, we can have the chance to react differently, to adapt to it. In self-knowledge schools, becoming an observer is important to discern the selves that like to suffer, that like to remain as victims. And when we adapt to a painful situation, it means we gain the knowledge it provides us with about ourselves. And after that we don't suffer as we used to do. And here, time is an important factor. Thanks to the mechanism of time, we don't relive the situations in exactly the same state of comprehension. Had we relived our suffering at the same intensity each time, the world would be unlivable. The mechanism of time and comprehension lends us phases for digestion. For example, the initial reaction or pain we have in the face of a situation becomes different after a while, and we notice this when we face the situation again. In other words, in time we get out of that state of suffering. We get the chance of observing ourselves from outside. So, after saying these, I can say that what we need to do is not to imagine the suffering pain but to imagine the states we want to achieve after going through a period of suffering and pain, the states of wholeness, the state of unity, etc. We need to meditate on such states. It would be much more beneficial for us to work and act in the direction of higher vibrations and to get the brain and the nervous system working in that direction. Would you like to add something?
Well, for that question I can give a clear answer. We are conscious beings. We have the freedom of choice. Yes, to Adam and Eve, it is said that do not eat the fruit of that tree, but we did and took the responsibility of choosing. So, if you want to watch those TV dramas about pain and suffering, do it, but please take the responsibility of choosing this. Yes, we have the right of choosing the wrong thing, as well, but if we can start observing the results of this choice, we will begin giving up choosing it. This is a method. I think, our friend's question is also about taking over other people's pains and suffering, and yes, there are healers of those kind, but this is a very hard way of healing people. Therefore, it is not advisable. Maybe, you watched the movie, The Green Mile. There was an African American prisoner in this movie. Yes, I am keeping on suggesting movies, What he does in the movie is that kind of healing. Yet, it is very hard, strenuous way of healing, and I don't think we need to engage with it. Because as conscious beings, now we know that, the events and situations we are face to face are what we need to work with. We don't need extra pains of sufferings. The pains we personally suffer from are the ones we need to work on. Let's try to understand their roots and neutralize these, to transform them into bits of self-knowledge. And here, again we talk about the events and situations in our lives. So out-focus must be the events and situations we attract by sympathization. All those feelings and emotions caused by the events, fears, joys, loves, thrills, our real topic is those. We don't need to engage with other external concerns. What would it be the result if a person unnecessarily wants to take over the pains of the people in the so-called nightlife? Going to the nightclubs, casinos, brothels to observe and mingle with people in their lowest states in the name of healing them? Could that person come back home untouched? At least, he or she would be confused. Then after a while, that person may become one of them because the repetition creates habits, then addiction. Let's go back to the example of watching TV dramas. If you say that I watch them consciously, without making it a habit or an addiction, it is all right. Yet, if you watch them all night, back to back, if you can't wait to see the next episode, if you talk about these whole week, then there is something you need to work on. It is now an addiction. How do I know it? From my own experience. Otherwise, I couldn't tell you about its disadvantages.
Maybe there is something else in such habits. Why do such TV shows move us? Which kind of emotions they trigger within us? Do we see in those fictional characters something that's missing in us? Or do they aggravate that something already within us? Why did we move by this? It is like a hook. A hook is fastened to one side and something is get hooked to it. It is two-sided. So, I think it is very important for all of us to observe, understand what is get hooked to our hooks. Why that thing gets hooked. Why it is repeatedly got hooked.
I agree. Here, the book talks about sublime manifestations such as all kinds of love, thought, conscience. If the book emphasizes these, we must be aware of their importance. So far, we discussed that all kinds of feelings and emotions are of matter. Yet, the book described love, thought, conscience as sublime manifestations. Yes, at some parts the book says these are also of matter, but let's discern the sublime manifestation of love is not the love we always talk about. This is a spiritual kind of love, the love that directs us to have the power of imagination for imagining the states we want to be in, to become. A higher version of sympathization. And briefly, we can say that this kind of love is the beginning of the thought and comprehension, and the conscience is the mechanism for the classification. And in lines below, we read, that have occurred in a being through infinite motions, combinations, forms and states as matter, are in effect the counterparts of spirit's infinite behaviors which exist in its own plan and, unknown to us, have been translated into ideal, emotional and vital or biological forms in accordance with the matter possibilities of the universe. And we are starting to become aware of such manifestations. And I made a note to mention, the word ideal here is not the same with thought. It is not a thought produced by brain. It is related to the being. And the topic of comprehension. Wow! Do we have time? Last 15 minutes, eh? Okay, here we read, comprehension's state in motion belongs to matter. And its state in regard to expression belongs to spirit. What do we see here? Well, let me tell you. We see that bridge at the background of Tülin. Comprehension is just like this bridge. It feeds and connects both sides.
So, within the relation of spirit and matter, if these two are not within each other and only interact through our being, this relation is not through our current bodies. And if our being, our body is a reflection, an expression of the motions caused by the needs of the spirit, we must remember what we read at the beginning of the book. What initiated and directed this motion in the amorphous matter is the original principle. And starting from the first motion to this immense complexity of motions, how the comprehension occurred. Only when the being reached the human stage. And the most important thing here is the comprehension is also of matter, in the sense of motions. Because it becomes out through infinite motions in a process of continuous formations, deformations, transformations. Comprehension comes about through this expansion and the learnings caused by these motions. The closer to us version of this is the motions and learnings through the brain and the nervous system. All these learnings we act upon and internalize, and then after death, we put through accounting, and compared with all previous learning from all those past lives and became the essential knowledge is reflected or transmitted to the being, and then, it becomes inclusive of spirit. Of course, later in the book, we will read the mechanism of this in details. And at the end of the paragraph we read first last week, the book says, "And when spirit is no more, all expressions and manifestations belonging to it will vanish and the being will disintegrate at once. Matter reverts to its amorphous state." And hearing or reading this, people say, "What will happen to me? All these for nothing?" We assume that when this body ends, everything will end. However, we talk about a system in an infinite progress up to the unitary, and only then, when spirit is no more in this universe, matter reverts to its amorphous state. Yes, it does, but everything transmitted to the spirit as essential knowledge that was acquired throughout this infinite progress becomes inclusive of the spirit. The comprehension in the being merges with the spirit. Of course, we don't and can't know or understand what necessitates the evolution and through what kind of needs it emerges in the spirit, because these are superuniverse truths. We can only have an idea through its reflections in the universe. So, in this sense, this fear of vanishing or this futile search for immortality of humankind have its roots in this twisted, degenerated illusion of obsolescence. With our narrow and limited perceptions, with our twisted imaginations, we understand these words as though the universe will end tomorrow, spirit will forsake us, everything will cease to be. Foreseeing this wrong perception, the book underlines this repeatedly. Yes, such a perception may arise from those lines, but the truth is, whatever the beings comprehended up until the unitary becomes inclusive of the spirit and merges with the spirits.
At this point, let's try something for our friends to visualize in their minds, to feel. Let's imagine ourselves as cells. Then, let's make ourselves as plants in our mind's eye. We are not humans beings yet. And what increases in our being? Comprehension, of course. Still driven by the instincts but gaining knowledge. The ferment of being is comprehension, and it starts rising. Gradually. What happens next? From plant stage, it passes to animal stage. Comprehensions expand a little bit mote. This stage is mostly driven by the sensations. And when we reach the human stage that we are now in, we begin to do applications in a much higher level by the human body, but still, the comprehensions expand. From the first cell to the human being, the process is expansion of comprehension. And we are driven mostly by emotions and partially by reason. So if we can integrate this two-sided expansion of comprehension, both in matter and in spiritual being, we can intuit that what utilizes the influences in the universe is the comprehension. It merges with the influences, it utilizes the influences, and also it influences matter and beings in its vicinity. So, what we feel as I is our comprehension. And more our awareness grows, more we can sense this. And again, when we pass from the human stage to the semi-subtle stages, we pass there not as solid bodies but as comprehension, that is, as beings, at first as subtle bodies. So, we are in the business of expanding the comprehension, and eventually when it expands enough to encompass the whole universe, we will reach the maximum point of this expansion. Being is not individual at this point but becomes the universe itself as the unitary. And only then, spirit loosens its focus on the matter universe, because that whole comprehension is in and with the spirit. So, what you call myself will not vanish, but its fears and emotions will be transformed to comprehension. And why do we concern ourselves about that point when spirit ceases its relationship with matter? At that point, we will not be humans but beings, after all.
Yes, but what should concern us must be how we can reduce this into our own lives. All right, the comprehension of our beings is expanding, up to the unitary, etc. But how will I reflect this in my daily life? Throughout my lifetime, with each impression I internalize. Because I am not fed only with food, as you said, with every and each impression I take into my brain feeds me as well. Yes, we mentioned these TV dramas many times this evening, so let's continue with this example. As we keep on watching these TV dramas, we are feeding our brain with their content as an image, a thought, an emotion. We can digest or indigest these. And we mostly act automatically or at best, semi-consciously. However, when we notice this automatism, then we can master it by choosing things to do consciously, with purpose, in a certain way. At once, we invite comprehension back to our lives. Then, events and situations stop driving us and we take the wheel. This is the power of choosing. So, with the efforts we make in that direction, we can be in service to our being in this task of expanding comprehension.
You may say that mastering our feelings, emotions and habits can't make a difference in this infinite system, but if our beings aim to expand our comprehension, even the smallest achievement of us must be creating some results in regard to this immense system of higher influences working towards this expansion of comprehensions. Yes, we repeat that we don't know much about the spirit, but still we can say that the bridge between the being and the spirit is comprehension, from this perspective. Of course, we never disregard the knowledge about the original principle, the laws of nature, the mechanisms of influences and the occurrence of necessities. Please think about the questions I asked until next week. If you study or watch the previous videos and read and reread the pages we commented on so far, I am sure you will produce some ideas and intuitions. And please write us your comments. We will brainstorm together and such thinking opens doors to wider ideas and intuitions. If not next week, then in the following 2 months. No problem. As long as we work on it, it will be productive.
Yes, we shared the link for that video. We look forward to reading your comments to these questions. And let's stop here for this evening.
Good, because my favorite TV drama is about to start. Actually, it is my time to go to bed. At least until 3 a.m. we need to sleep so melatonin is secreted properly and our body re-establish itself, and whatever we did this evening is filed as we go in and out of this cycle of deep sleep.
Yes, the more we use our brain and body properly, it will work better. The more we use our brain, the better it will become in receiving and transmitting influences. That's why it is beneficial for us to question and to think in ever-widening manner. I was checking the chat box and I see that our friends are mostly chatting about pain and suffering this evening. Well, dear friends, each of us is responsible for our own being, its wholesomeness, and completing our lifetimes in the best possible way. Here, we can only suggest our own approach, ideas, and experiences. We can't impose these on you. Each of us is free for suffering our own pains as we like. We have right to choose, and if there is choice then there is consequences for choosing. We will face the consequences of our choices. Because of this, it is better choosing with awareness, choosing consciously. After all, at the point we reach as human beings, we live in times we need to break through our automatisms. Yes, after these words, let's say good evening.
Good evening.